everyone, my name is Chloe, and today I'm here with a little twofer video. I'm going to talk about my December standouts and stats, as well as my whole 2024 year of reading, and the stats, and not the highs and lows. That's going to be a separate video. I'm going to do my very favorites. I'm probably not going to do my least favorites or books I DNF'd or anything, because I just don't want to be negative about that. And plus I can't ever pick favorites, and so I'm probably going to do multiple videos that are favorites based on genre. And so, yes, this is going to be all the stats and standouts for December, as well as all the reading stats for the entire year. So it's going to be a two-parter, and I'm probably going to be in different clothes when I talk about the yearly stuff, because I'm on borrowed time right now. So we're going to do the December stats and standouts, and then we'll do the yearly stats, and we'll just talk about all things reading. So in December, I read 33 books, no DNFs, and I read 9,947 pages, which is 321 pages per day. My average page length of my books was 301 pages, because I do include the books that I read with my kids in this stat. So I was reading about a book a day. 24 were novels, 7 were chapter books, and 1 was a devotional, and 1 was a tome. And I am so intimidated by tomes, but I've been enjoying kind of cracking down on 1 or so a month. Then I read 24 adult, 1 young adult, and 8 middle grade. 30 were on my shelf, and 3 were from somewhere else, and that is astonishing to me. I always have the goal of reading at least 50% off my shelf, and I am very proud to say I definitely did that this month. I read 22 using Libby, 8 just directly off my shelf, 2 from Spotify, and 1 from Kindle. So one of my 2025 goals is to use my 15 hours of Spotify minutes a year, or a month, and I think I did that this month. It's not a 2025 goal, but I would like to do more reading on my Kindle, and so definitely did that. I read 1, but I definitely did that this month. 8 off my shelf, and 22 that I used Libby as well, either audiobook or ebook. And then 24 were audio, 8 were just physical reads, and 1 was an ebook. So again, not great on the Kindle reading, but better. I read 3 new releases and 30 backlist, and so that's interesting. 7 were women's fiction, 7 romance, 5 contemporary, 3 mystery thriller, 3 magical realism, 2 historical, 2 nonfiction, 1 sci-fi fantasy, 1 cozy mystery, 1 biblical fiction, and 1 nature book, which is a book with an animal main character. So I'll have the visual up, but as always, it is just a hodgepodge of genres, just the way I like it. Then as far as star ratings go, I had 2 2-stars, 2 2.5s, 7 3 stars, 14 3.5 stars, 7 4 stars, and 1 5 star. So the average was 3.39, which is lower than my typical. And I feel like I've read a lot of just very meh books in December. So not the best reading month as far as quality, but can't win them all. So I normally do a best, like I talk about the 5 favorites or whatever, and honestly, I could only think of 3 favorites. So let's talk about them. 3 favorites, 1 middle grade, and 3 adult favorites. So the first one was We Were Never Here by Andrea Bartsch. So this is one that I read for Vlogmas. So I will link the video down below where I talk more in detail about it. But this is about 2 friends who go on vacation. They go on an annual vacation together, and somebody is dead, and they're kind of involved, and then the rest of the book is like them kind of running from this, and I was stressed out, but in the best way. And one of the friends is a little like displaying some sociopathic tendencies. The other is kind of more of a goody good, but we're finding out more about them individually and their friendship throughout. And like I said, I was stressed out, but in the best way. And then we've got She Was the Quiet One by Michelle Campbell. So Michelle Campbell is an author that I was just about to break up with, because I haven't liked any of her books, but this one I really like. So this is about 2 sisters, twin sisters, who go to college, and one of them gets involved with like the older kids who are up to no good, and the other one is really studious, really quiet, whatever. Well, the book opens with a prologue. One of them has their sister's blood all over their hands. One's dead, one's alive. We don't know who is who or who did what. And we also follow the like headmaster of, maybe it's like a boarding school, maybe it's not college, I don't know, but I don't know. But anyway, we also follow the headmaster and his wife and their involvement, and there's, both of them become the quiet one at some point. So I do feel like most of her titles give away more than, like, It Was Always the Husband is one of them, or It's Always the Husband. And I mean, I just feel like her titles are not well chosen, but this was a lot better than I expected. And then so ironically, my 3 favorites are 2 thrillers and a historical fiction. So Between Friends by Debbie Macomber. So this is a favorite just because it is not what I expected. I expected a Debbie Macomber Hallmark movie, kind of cheesy romance, nothing exceptional. But this is a historical fiction that follows 2 friends from their time when they're small children in the 40s all the way up through the early 2000s. And just their lives as Vietnam comes and the war in Iraq comes, and just all their lives, romances, parenthood, motherhood, all the things. And so this one was it was really, really good. The other one is upstairs. It is big true, I don't know, Bible question and answers for kids or whatever. That was my 5-star because it is just so good. It talks about, I'll link my weekly wrap up where I show it, but it asks a question for the day and then dives into the scripture and just the ideas behind that question. And then there's quizzes. There's at the very end, there is a wrap up of every book in the Bible. And so it gives you just a couple sentences explaining what that book is about. And it was just so good. I learned things. My kids learned things. It was a very, very conversational, easy to digest book. And so, yeah, that was definitely a favorite. So that is it for my December stats, standouts. And now I will come back here in a little bit and we're going to talk about everything for the year as far as how many books I DNF'd, how much I read, what percentage I read off my shelves, and so much more. So I will be back with that in just a second. Okay, everyone, it's the next day and I am back now seemingly covered in spit up, but I am going to talk about the year in review. So I was so excited to figure this out, and I have found some surprises and some things that are not surprising at all. So let's get into my 2024 year in review. So in the year, I read 475 books. Now, that does include the books that I read with my kids. It includes all genres, everything. So 475 books, and I DNF'd 17, which I think I said in my goals video that I wanted to DNF more than I had the year before, and I definitely did, because the year before I've DNF'd 4, and this year was 17. I only had 4 rereads, which is crazy, but I'm not a huge fan of rereading just because the books that I loved, I don't want to ruin for myself. And if they were just mediocre, why am I going to reread them? So I don't know. I think some of those are probably middle grade kind of nostalgic reads, but that's it. So then I read 128,000 pages, which is about 350 pages per day. I don't know how that happens, except audio and graphic novels both kind of skew that page count. My average page length was 270 pages per book. So shorter books and or a lot of middle grade kind of mixed in definitely inflate that number. I read 1.3 books per day, and 89 books were with my kids, and 386 were by myself. So you can say 475 or 386 by myself. It doesn't really matter. But overall, it was a great year in reading. I read 262 novels, 110 chapter books, 72 graphic novels, 9 devotionals, 8 tomes, which actually shocks me. That's almost one a month. I mean, not quite, but 8 tomes, 7 novellas, 4 books in verse, and 3 anthologies, which also surprises me because I don't love anthologies. Then 267 were adult. 2 were new adult. Shockingly, I don't love new adult. 12 were young adult, which also surprises me. I guess that's one a month. And 194 middle grade. So of the middle grade, again, 89 were with my kids and 105 were by myself. So I read a fair amount of middle grade for myself, either pre-reading for my kids and or just kind of a brain break, something I really enjoy. Then 243 books that I read were on my shelf, and 232 were from somewhere else. So it was my goal to read at least 50% off my shelf, and I am proud to say I read 51.2% off my shelves. And like I said, that was a big goal, and I kind of inadvertently hit it. 200 books I borrowed from Libby. 161 I borrowed from the library. 62 were just directly off my shelf. 23 were from NetGalley. And I did not talk about this in my goals, but I'm going to be really selective with my NetGalley this year. It seems like I was last year. 23 is not a lot, and I like that because I don't know. I just I don't love ebooks, and the audiobooks are fine, but I really want to prioritize my shelves and then just like browsing. I really want to prioritize those things. 8 were from Spotify, which is a goal for this year, is to use that more. So have at least 12 because you get 15 hours a month. And so that's like maybe 1.5 books a month. And so I want to have at least 12 in 2025. And then 6 from my Kindle, 6 from Kindle Unlimited, 4 from Hoopla, 4 from Libro FM, which is also very shameful because I get 10 free audiobooks a month as a part of their ALC program, and I only listen to 4. Granted, I may have listened to some of those books on Libby or in a different format, but only 4 is not good. And then 1 from Audible. I don't have Audible, and so it must have been an old purchase, so there's that. And then 233 of my reads were on audio, 221 were physical, and 21 were ebook. And so 49.1% of my reads were audio. So almost half of my reads are audio. Now, if I take out the books that I read with my kids, that inflates even more, and 59% of my reads are on audio. So I would have actually guessed it was even higher because I feel like I do a lot of audiobook listening, but that's what it is. 213 of my books were new releases this year, which is shocking to me. 259 then were backlist. So 45% of my reading was new releases. And new releases for me were anything that was published in 2024. And so that actually really surprises me because I would say I'm like definitely a backlist girly, but between Book of the Month and just being on YouTube, I feel like I want to keep up with the hype. And so I guess I'm more split than I thought. My top 5 genres. So I will put the whole wheel up of every genre, but you guys know I read a lot of genres. And so this is the top 5. Contemporary, which is 25.1%, women's fiction, which is 13.1%, mystery thriller, 12.6%, nonfiction, 12%, and romance, 10.9%. So those are my top 5. The percentages change slightly if you take out my books that I read with my kids, but they're the same 5 and in the same order. So that's really surprising to me. There's a lot of like blurry lines between contemporary, women's fiction, romance, but that's how it shook out. Like I said, star ratings wise, I DNF 17, which is great. And I gave 2 1-stars, which 1 star for me is like, this should not be a book. Nobody should read this. And so it's really surprising that I gave out 2. Then I got 15 5-stars, which I also am pretty stingy about 5 stars. And so that's interesting. And my average rating was 3.51, which is very much average for me. I know, like, I guess on the 5-star scale, 2.5 would be middle of the road. For me, 3-star is middle of the road. It's like, meh, if it's really interesting to you, pick it up. If it's not, you can skip it. 3.5 is like, I would recommend it. So if it has any interest to you, pick it up. And that's where a lot of my reads were. And that feels really good. And in fact, my most common rating was 4-star, but there were more low outliers than high outliers. And so having mostly 4 stars is a really great thing in my opinion. 4-star for me is like, it's a pretty solid book. I do rate I'm really stingy on the ends. I don't do a lot of 1-stars. I don't do a lot of 5 stars, but kind of in that middle, it's not hard to get a 4-star for me. Definitely not hard to get a 3.5. I'm a little more generous in there. So 4 stars is still pretty good. The month that I read the most books was July, and that really surprises me. I don't know why. I don't know. July is summer. We're doing pool stuff. We did school stuff. Like, I'm not really sure why. July. I'm pretty surprised by that. And my least month was February, which is the shortest month, and I don't know. I feel like winter, I never read as much in the winter because we're all inside. We're all like overstimulated. There's always, a lot going on in my house. And so February is a harder month. But My oldest book was Dr. Dolittle, which was published in 1920. And I just think that's interesting. Like seeing some of the books that I read that were like pre-1950s, I guess they're considered classics. And they're mostly what I've read with my kids. But they were pretty enjoyable, especially for being classics. Like I feel like I would say I'm not a classics reader, but maybe I need to make that a genre for 2025. And then another thing I wanted to look at that I think is really interesting, my most read authors. I had 8 graphic novels by Kayla Miller. So I feel like the graphic novels, they're really easy to binge a series. And so these are not really, they are my most read author, but I had 8 by Kayla Miller and 6 graphic novels by Terry Levinson. But as far as like novels go, I had 6 by Francine Rivers and 6 by Karen Kingsbury. I wouldn't have guessed that after like the year, but I guess so. 4 by Mary Higgins Clark and 4 by Terry Blackstock. And then 3 by Barbara Delinsky, Beverly Lewis, Denise Hunter, Ellen Hildebrand, James Patterson, Christy Woodson Harvey, Richard Paul Evans, Sally Hepworth, Sheila Roberts, Cheryl Woods, and Susan Mallory. So I didn't read more than 8 books from anybody, but most common, I read 3 books from a ton of different authors. And I'm interested to see how that'll happen in 2025, since I have the goal of like binging or at least reading one long running series. I'm in theory going to have an author that I read 10, 12, 20 books from. And so that'll be interesting because it was really widespread this year. So that is everything as far as the stats that I keep. But then I pulled up my Goodreads year in review, and there's a couple of other interesting things. Now, Goodreads, I do write a review of every book. However, sometimes the dates get messed up. I'm not as particular about making sure that that is accurate. And so it says my longest book was A Stroke of Luck by Jill Shalvis, and that's because it's a bind up of 2 different books, and it's 646 pages. My most shelved book was The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, and I did not like that book. My least shelved was a middle grade called Game Face Sports Report, and only 5 people have shelved it. Let's see, highest rated on Goodreads. This one actually surprises me. It's A Life Impossible by Steve Gleason, and this is about his journey with ALS. It has an average rating of 4.63. Wow. And then I think that's about it for the Goodreads stats and things. So that is my year in review. So upon like reflection, I would say that I am not really worried about the reread thing. I definitely hit my goal of reading at least 1 book physically per month because I read quite a few with my kids and without. And I definitely hit that 50% mark of reading off my shelf. So that feels good. Yeah, overall, I would say it was a great year. It was a great year for reading. It feels really productive. My husband it's January 1st today. It is New Year's. And my husband is working on these bookshelves. So hopefully in 2025, we'll see more organized, like nicely curated shelves. And we'll just see if we can make it work, because right now I'm really motivated by reading off my shelves. And so hopefully that continues and we make good progress, and things are changing around here. So hopefully we've got more like 75% off my shelf, which sometimes means like my motivation to read off my shelf sometimes means I buy books that I wouldn't have otherwise. So maybe it's not a good goal. But anyway, that is everything. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.